Today I'm reviewing some real database designs that were submitted by subscribers. I'll show you what works, what doesn't, and the exact changes I would make to improve each one. If you'd like your own design reviewed in a future video, make sure you join my email list using the link in the description. Now let's get into the first review. Here is the first design sent in by Calfan. This is based on a donation system where a user is able to donate to ongoing donations. There are admins to manage these donations, such as creating, deleting, or completing them. There's a role of an accountant who can help facilitate donations made from cash, who then creates a donation record. Most donations are made through online methods. There are categories and ratings for donations and users with roles. Overall, I like this design. It looks clean. I see it's made using a tool called Eraser, which I've never heard of. I might have to look into it. In the users table, we have a full name column to capture the person's name. We may want to split this into two names, one for first name and one for last name, so you can sort on last names or first names if you want. However, depending on where you are creating this system, you may not want to do that. Some cultures don't have a first and last name, so that's something to consider. But if you're pretty sure that your users will have two names like this, I would suggest separating it into two columns. Storing the phone number as a string is good. I've mentioned this in some other videos, and I prefer storing this as a string instead of a number. If you store it as a number, you lose the leading zeros at the start. You also don't do any addition or other operations on phone numbers, so you don't need to store them as a number. There are several dates around the database, including the date joined for a user, which is good. It can be used to measure user growth over time. The transaction table seems pretty good and central to the database as it captures the relationships between users and donations. You may want to have a lookup table for the payment method and payment status, as there would only be a small number of possible values. Or you could use an enum in MySQL or your application code, as it's a pretty well-defined list. The roles table just has an ID and a name. I'm not sure how you plan to implement each of the permissions in the description of the database we went over. I assume it would be in the application code. You may want to add some of this to the database instead, such as a permission table that has entries for different operations, and then a joining table to connect roles and permissions. The donations table seems quite solid. You've got a good set of information there about the donation itself and some dates to track when things happen and when things expire. I see there is an enum field for the status here, which is good. The ratings table seems okay. I don't have any comments on that. You link to both the user and the donation tables, with the rating value being stored. The categories table seems simple as well. A lookup table for the categories and linked to donations. The description or requirements mentioned something about an accountant that can help a user who has donated cash. In this scenario, who would the user ID of the transaction be? Would it be the user who donated instead of the accountant? If so, that makes sense to me and my limited understanding of this system. If you want to capture the accountant that helped them, you could add another column to the transaction table to capture the ID of the accountant who assisted the cash donation. So overall, this is a pretty solid design that seems to meet the requirements pretty well. I had a couple of suggestions and comments, but no major issues, and it could be that I don't fully understand the requirements. Let's move on to the next design. Here is the second design, which was sent in by Jamie. Now, the first thing Jamie opened with in the email is that he realizes his submission is large and probably needs to be broken up into several smaller designs, and probably needs to be broken up into several smaller diagrams. That's something you'll probably notice as you look at this. It's a good realization and would help make the diagram easier to understand, but will work with this diagram. So what is it? It's a database for a used bookstore. Customers can buy, trade in, and even consign their own books for sale, which I understand is giving the store permission to sell the book on your behalf. Books can be delivered to a locker for customers to pick up. Books will be evaluated to determine their credit amount, which the customer can accept, and then the trade-in is processed. Let's look at this design. It's a little tricky to visualize the relationships with these lines, but I've had this problem before with larger diagrams, and there's not much we can do other than trying to rearrange the diagram or splitting it up. Let's look at the book and author tables. This is good. We have the concept of an author, which is a many-to-many relationship to a book. This means a book has many authors and an author has many books. This is how I would design it. In the book table, there's a lot of useful columns. The condition, status, and shelf stored as lookup tables are good choices. I'm a fan of lookup tables for defined lists of values. The is fiction column for a book seems handy. Would this go on a category or on a book? It could go on a category, as a category could be fiction or non-fiction, but it makes sense to also put it on a book. It won't change once it is added, and it can make filtering on fiction books easier. The approval status of a book, this binary field, I wasn't sure what this was for initially, but I think it makes sense after thinking about it. I think it's a Boolean or true or false field, and shows whether the book record is approved or not. I like the created and updated dates on the book record. This is handy to know when things have changed. Also, the deleted at date is handy. I don't see that a lot, but I like it. I assume it's for a soft delete, which is where you can mark a record as inactive rather than delete it from a table. Let's take a look at the procurement table. This table looks good to me. There are some foreign keys to look up tables, the vendor which we'll look at soon, and the cost and receive date. The source, publisher, and acquisition type tables all look okay. They are simple lookup tables. Let's look at the orders table. This section looks to be centered around the orders table. Overall, it looks good. I see there's a concept of a vendor, which I think allows for different sellers within a store or something. I'm not entirely sure. The order total field is helpful, and I assume it is a calculated field. Generally, we want to avoid storing these. However, I usually suggest making an exception for these kind of amount or total fields, which can be calculated at a point in time. The underlying data, such as item prices, could change over time, and it can be helpful to store this order total at a point in time. So I think it's okay to have this here. For the shopping cart tables, these seem to make sense. We have a shopping cart and a shopping cart item to allow for multiple items. I did this in my e-commerce database design video as well. There was actually a comment there about how a shopping cart is just a customer order with a different status. That was a good point and could be something to consider here. Maybe it could be an order that has not been submitted, maybe with a status of in cart or unsubmitted or something. The sale table makes sense to me as well. It looks like it captures events of books that are sold and links to orders. It's got price, discounts, and when it was sold. I'm not quite sure how it is different from an order actually. Maybe there's something I don't understand about the requirements. The customer table seems okay. We have an email address and a username. The sender name, I assume, is put on postage labels when books are sold and posted, but could be something else. The password field is only 20 characters. I would imagine this would be a larger field. The application should encrypt the user-entered password and store this in the column. This would be a much larger value than what the user enters, so maybe a width of like 100 or 200 could be enough. The credit balance is helpful and the created and updated date is good. The vendor table makes sense as well. It's like a user login for someone that sells a book. I'm not sure if we should combine this with the customer table to have a single user table. Combining similar records into the same table or having separate tables is a common design decision. You know what the requirements would be better than anyone, so you're best placed to decide. The credit table seems pretty good. It has relationships to other tables using foreign keys and has an enum for the status. The return table is shown here. I'm not sure how this fits into the overall design and requirements actually, and how it's different to a consignment. Maybe it's something I've missed or misunderstood, but I can assume it's something about returning books that have been purchased. Next is this consignment table. This makes sense to me mostly. I don't fully understand some columns like expired at and is donated and is consigned, but that is once again down to my own lack of understanding of the requirements. The reservation table looks good. We have links to customer and book, created and updated dates, and a status as a lookup table. Overall, this is a pretty good design. Jamie said it was a large design and needed to be split, which is a fair point and is evident in all of the overlapping lines. It seems like it has been well considered. There are columns to represent different values or stages for things in the business process, lots of created and updated dates. You may want to consider combining the customer and vendor tables into a user table if they are similar records. Or if I have misunderstood and they are quite different, keep them as they are. If you want your own design reviewed in a future video, join my email list using the link below. You'll also get my free database design project guides so you can see how to design databases for many different scenarios. We reviewed a couple of database designs and covered some things like creating lookup tables, the idea of combining two similar tables into one, the placement of some columns in tables, and understanding the business requirements. Now that you've seen these examples, you'll want to watch my video on database design mistakes next. It helps explain many of the common mistakes we make when designing databases and how to avoid them. Thanks for watching.